So when do PhDs implode? Hopefully you'll learn something from this video in terms of how to manage this process yourself. And hopefully you'll get some takeaway from this. So from my perspective, in terms of when PhDs actually implode, we have two moments. And it's really having to do with the same sort of phenomenon that happens. So first of all, it often happens immediately, maybe within your first year of doing a PhD and getting into the process, or maybe it's in your first 2 years of getting into it, and you realize, like, holy cow, this is really, really tough. And I would never have guessed that this was going to be this tough. And you kind of melt down. You kind of go through this moment of, like, I don't know, I don't think I could do this. And then the other side is extremely long. The other side is much further past. And this is based on my own experience, right? It's much further along where you realize there is no real end to anything that you actually do. And it becomes kind of the same pattern. And you see these sort of two moments, sort of moments where people drop out or they stop with a research career, they kind of get out of it. And at the beginning, they realize this is not for me because it is so overwhelming. And they never really could have guessed it was going to be this way. And the outcomes look really bleak, and they don't necessarily feel all that good of doing this particular path. And it is very, very challenging. And then on the extreme, we have where people are just kind of losing faith in the whole process. And you could see me going through this, right? Where I'm losing faith in the whole process. But one thing that's really important for me, and this is why I am so public about this, is I'm trying to walk through this. And this is part of the reason why I wish I would have had you see me all the way through. Because how you get through this, how you do well, how you get to the other side, and there's no other side. That's where, that's the truth of it. There's no other side, right? The whole PhD process is about you holding your breath, thinking that if I just do this sprint, if I just get here, everything is going to be glorious. And you realize at some point that never surmounts, that is never there. It's never part of your life. The sort of glory that you imagine just doesn't necessarily get there. If you do well, the signal that you get to tell you that you've done well is you get more work. More people give you more stuff because you're building credibility, and your career gets just overwhelming. So what do? Right? Like, what is it that you actually do to manage this? You pay attention to those moments where you're kind of feeling out of control, and you try to have various different outlets in your life that keep you going. The way that I think about this, right? I kind of think of it as like med school or something like that, where you're doing that sprint and then you get out and you realize, oh man, it's a lot more sprinting that you have to do for a long time. And how do you manage this process is you manage your life. You have things where you have enjoyment in your life, where you have outlets, where you just love who you are along the way. And you get into the habit of doing things that are just for you and doing things that give you joy. And you push away those things and you protect those things. Part of why I do this reciprocity project is it gives me joy. It's something that I'm building towards, and there's no outcome. There's no way that I'm ever going to get to a moment where, like, hey, this is glorious and all of that kind of stuff. The same thing, right? Where you are managing this and you realize, like, hey, there's moments where I could fall apart and this is not going to work out for me and I'm going to implode. But there's moments where I use those to keep going and to use those things where I am getting okay with who I am at any given moment. So I'm going to tell you the truth of it. I still feel like a mess every day. I still feel like very insecure when I'm around other people. I still have all of the feelings, everything, all of that stuff that you think that life is going to change and it's going to become glorious and all that kind of stuff. That does not disappear. But what I've learned to do is to manage it, to harness it, to figure out ways that I feel okay, at least in the moment, with the things I'm doing. And so what are the moments where I feel kind of okay? It's the moments where I am not doing the social comparison thing. I have made sure that I am ignoring all of that social comparison. So as soon as I see anything particularly online or people sort of talk about how, relative we are in terms of performance, I ignore it. I intentionally ignore it every time. And and when I really want to torture myself is when I actually look at that stuff. And there's like moments where I want to torture myself. I don't know why. It's like S&M, right? Like I really, really, really torture myself, and I actually look at that stuff and I feel terrible for the rest of my day. So I ignore that as much as I can. I've learned to ignore it. I've learned to push away anything that sort of trigger moments that doesn't make me feel good. And I've learned to take plenty of time to go for walks and get exercise and take time where I have time with my family. All of those things are super, super healthy. And I encourage you to manage the process, to know that there are moments where you're going to implode. There are moments where you feel like your life's out of control. There are moments where it's not going that well. And those moments when you feel like that, when you're not feeling good or your relationships are not doing that well in your life, use that as a cue. That's a very, very strong cue for you to say, wait a minute, is this worth it? Let's take a slight step back and let's figure out how to manage this in a healthy way, right? Is when you go through those moments where you are holding your breath and really, really holding your breath to get to the end where you're like, I'm gonna do this and everything's gonna be glorious. How many times every single conversation that I ever have in the academic life is, I can't do this because I've got this to do. I've got this review, I've got this paper to do, and I can't do this. And it's the same story every time. It's I feel bad about myself, so I need to show to the outside world that I need to be successful, so I'm gonna do this thing. Just be honest. Just say, I am not feeling good about myself, so I need to get this stuff done. And the reason why I need to get this stuff done is I don't feel honest about myself. So if you're honest and you realize that, hey, I can manage this process and say, wait a minute, do I really need to get this done at this moment? The answer is often no. I can actually get to other things in my life that are going to add to me and make sure that I'm going to do okay in the long run. Then you should do those things. But the answer is absolutely not. Go have at her. That's when you're going to implode. You're going to realize that there is an insatiable demand from everything that you ever do, and it never goes away. It never, never, never goes away. There's always more expectations. People are always going to tell you that you're not good enough. Doesn't matter where you're at. If you are the top dog in your institution at this moment, when you go away, you're no longer that top dog, or nobody cares. The rest of the world doesn't care. And so you manage that by saying, hey, I do what I can do. I do okay. And I'm going to get good sleep. I'm going to eat healthily. I'm going to make sure that I have some rest. I make sure that I get exercise. All those basic things that we know that are helpful, do those things. And then fill in the space around that with work so that you feel enjoyment and you can actually get up and do the things that you want to do. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.